Hey guys, welcome back to the part 2 series of me explaining how vitamin deficiency can be a reason why your hair is not growing. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right into this. If you haven't seen part 1, I'll make sure I link the video below. But part 1 explains how I became vitamin deficient and some of the symptoms to look for if you are vitamin D and iron deficient. So before we get started, I do want to let you know I am going to be very transparent. So if you're queasy stomach or you don't like hearing about blood or whatnot, this may not be the video for you, but I did want to give that quick disclaimer. And I also wanted to explain I am not a medical provider. I'm just here to tell you about my story and the journey I'm going through to try to fix some of my vitamin deficiency. So briefly in part 1, I talked about how fibroids were causing my heavy menstrual period. Now initially in 2020, I found out I just had 2 small fibroids, but over the next 2.5 years, well, I guess 3 years now, since we're almost at 2025, my period has gotten to be extreme. When I'm talking about, it's like a murder scene. I'm trying to figure out what in the world is going on. I literally have to sleep in diapers, which always, I want to thank you for creating those, because the girls that know, it is very hard to sleep when you have this super heavy flow. So I appreciate that from you guys. However, in 2024, when I was doing my regular checkup, the doctor said she felt some masses, and I explained that, well, I've been told I have fibroids, so it could be the fibroids. And the fact that she could feel them, she was a little concerned. So she was saying, well, let's do another ultrasound. And that's what she found out, that my fibroids went from 2 fibroids to 3 fibroids, and one of them grew to 5 centimeters. Now, later, I'm going to explain how I was misdiagnosed. So everybody commonly associates heavy periods with fibroids. So she recommended I just have the 5 centimeter one removed. She said, one, since I'm just dealing with the heavy bleeding that's affecting my iron levels and then also affecting my daily life, she said normally people don't get them removed until they're a little bit larger, but we can go ahead and move forward with that. Between July and August, I ended up switching my careers. I'm also an Army reservist, but I'm now an active order, so I have to go through TRICARE. So that means I have to find all new doctors, and I have to work through Walter Reed to be seen by a provider. So I went to go see another gynecologist, and she would not work on me until I had an MRI. And when I tell you, this was so frustrating, because this was the beginning of October, maybe the end of September, I can't remember. And the next available appointment for an MRI was 23 November. I literally had to go through 2 more cycles in order for us to determine the solution. Of course, the MRI showed that yes, there was a 5 centimeter mass, and that there were additional fibroids. Fibroids are non-cancerous tumors that grow in the uterus. So if you're trying to have kids, it's usually best to get them removed. Now, luckily, she had a cancellation, so we ended up having a consultation a 1.5 weeks after I had the MRI done. And she said, let's go ahead and get this fibroid out. I truly believe that this is the reason that's causing your heavy menstrual cycle, and you'll get back to normal. And luckily, she had a cancellation that coming Monday. This was Thursday. She had a cancellation on Monday to do the procedure. And I had already, talked to my supervisor to let him know this is coming down. And I was like, when I get the date, I just need to go, because I just can't wait anymore, because her next available appointment was until March, and we weren't waiting until March. So when we go to the hospital, we're getting prepped for surgery. She was trying to find this 5 centimeter fibroid. She couldn't find it, because I didn't have massive surgery. Okay, it's a bit TMI, but she went through the vaginal entrance, and she was just gonna slowly scrape out the 5 centimeter fibroid, which she thought was at the time, but they couldn't find it. So I'm gonna show you right here of what they were trying to remove. It's not disgusting at all, but if you can see this circle, this black circle, that's where usually a child's supposed to be. This was just additional uterus tissue that wasn't shedding. She ended up talking to my parents after the procedure was completed, and she basically explained I have adenomyosis, and if I'm saying this wrong, it's because I don't know how to say it. So I'm going to read the definition. Adenomyosis is a condition where tissue similar to the lining of the uterus, the endometrium, grows into the muscle wall of the uterus. It can cause various symptoms, which I'm gonna list here shortly, but basically that tissue can form into a ball and it can ultimately look like a fibroid. And this is how I was misdiagnosed. So usually women who have adenomyosis deal with infertility, which really makes sense. But essentially, I was misdiagnosed because most people only talk about fibroids, endometriosis, PCOS, but no one is talking about adenomyosis. Probably because none of us can say it, right? Now, the difference between adenomyosis and endometriosis is adenomyosis is inside the uterus wall, where endometriosis is on the outside. There's not much treatment for it except honestly a hysterectomy, and this is all from what I read. Now, I still have my post-op and hopefully I'll learn a little bit more. Like I mentioned in part 1, I'm going to continue to provide updates as I go along this journey. But some commonly known symptoms that come with adenomyosis is heavy menstrual bleeding. And when I say heavy menstrual bleeding, I mean you are like hemorrhaging. And then there's also very large blood clots. It is just like clots that are bigger than a quarter, and you will know, trust me. If you see one blood clot, I wouldn't worry about it, but I'm saying like I had like 3/4. It's a lot, and you'll notice them. Some other symptoms: severe menstrual cramps, pelvic pain, enlarged uterus, as I mentioned before, infertility, bloating in the abdomen, fatigue, and irregular menstrual cycles. Now, part of me starting to wonder if like a lot of the issues I have been dealing with, because recently in October, I started to have a lot of pelvic pain when I started to run, and which also would cause heavy legs. So I'm over here trying to run and I couldn't even get to half a mile without my legs feeling like the only way I could feel it was I was carrying dead meat, which is really probably some nerve damage from the tissue growing into the muscle, which this is my thought process. I don't know if this is factual yet. So I did schedule, an appointment with vascular surgery. I have to go through another ultrasound. They couldn't spot anything wrong with my veins, so they think there's nothing wrong with the blood flow. But after having the surgery, I'm starting to think that it could be the adenomyosis, simply because if you go to Google and you search like, hey, can adenomyosis affect your running? The number one answer comes in is yes, because of the pelvic pain. It can affect your hips and it can also affect your thighs. A lot of this is making sense because since 2022, I think it started in 2020, I was having digestive issues, but in 2022, when I say my stomach was so bloated, I looked like I was 4 months pregnant, and I was like, I don't know, but I have like a GI appointment next week. They were giving me antibiotics, because who even knows if these machines are even accurate, but the antibiotics did help remove the bloating. So, I mean, it did work, but I did have to get on the antibiotics 3 additional times after 2022. Constipation, stomach issues. I mean, all this stuff could be related to the adenomyosis, and I had no idea. Now, supposedly 1 out of every 5 females comes down with this condition. There's really no treatment besides a hysterectomy, but if you're looking to have children, you most likely will have to go through IVF to have a child. Now, there is a chance that you don't have to, but adenomyosis really happens later in the childbearing age. So if you're 35 and older, you may start to experience some of these symptoms. I'll make sure I link all the symptoms below so you guys can just look at the list, but it can truly impact your daily life. Luckily, the surgery / procedure was slightly successful. They were able to remove part of the mass that was inside my uterus, and then they are going to do testing to make sure, it's not cancerous. So that's all to be continued. But I did want to come on here and kind of explain this because, as I mentioned earlier, all you hear is PCOS, endometriosis, fibroids, but no one to me is really, now maybe I'm not looking for it, but I did not feel like more older women, because I feel like we're getting older, you're not seeing all the different effects of having high estrogen. So as I mentioned in part 1, high estrogen can also cause weight gain. So you're thinking, I must have PCOS because everyone's gaining weight with PCOS. Didn't have PCOS. All right, maybe it's my digestive issues. And honestly, when I took the antibiotics, I usually would drop like 5 pounds. And then once I fixed my vitamin deficiency, I was able to drop 14 pounds. But the best way to maintain your weight when you're dealing with some of these endometriosis, adenomyosis, PCOS is really a balanced diet, non-GMO, gluten-free, limit to no alcohol, and then movement. I mean, if you're someone like me that sits behind a computer, you need to just try to get 8 to 10,000 steps a day. And I noticed that significantly helped me lose a little bit of weight. It's still a very long journey to try to get back to my normal weight. I'm still about 25 pounds heavier than what I normally am, but it is a blessing to lose these 14 pounds because I have been struggling and I couldn't figure out why. Since I've truly cut out gluten to the best of my ability, you know, obviously sometimes I eat gluten when I'm out with friends or if I'm traveling, but Monday through Sunday, when I'm at home, it's usually a gluten-free diet, and I also do non-GMO. You also want to make sure that you're eating organic chicken. Honestly, you can't really trust it. My body can tell when stuff is really not true to the label, but look for stuff that is not pumped with hormones or any of that bad stuff that they talk about. You want to get the organic, range-free meats. Possibly also try to eat as much fish, but you just want to stay away from as many hormones as possible because you're already dealing with elevated estrogen levels, and you want to just do what you can to kind of keep them as balanced as possible. Now, I hope this helped. For anyone that's experiencing any of these symptoms, I just want to say you are not alone. This is very new to me too. And again, the stuff that I provided was just through my own Google research, which came from reputable sources. So yeah, I really said a lot and I can't believe I shared all this, but I feel like even though I'm 1 out of 5, I really felt like I needed to talk about this because I was a little upset to find out that I was misdiagnosed. Because in Google it says they can usually spot for adenomyosis through an MRI. I had multiple ultrasounds, I had an MRI, and everyone thought I just had fibroids. Now, I have a bunch of fibroids throughout my uterus, some that they don't want to remove. So she really was going in just to remove that 5-centimeter mass, but obviously it wasn't a fibroid. She did see 2 smaller fibroids in there, but I do have a bunch of smaller fibroids throughout my uterus that are just too deep within the muscle for her to remove. And I honestly believe I probably got uterine tissue somewhere embedded in my hip muscles that are causing my hip pain and making it hard for me to run. So I will come back. I will give an update in 2025 explaining a little bit more, and I'll let you guys know how I'm doing and if it also helped with the heavy bleeding. I think it may temporarily help, but at the end of the day, the only way to truly stop the heavy bleeding is to remove the uterus entirely, and we're not doing that, not yet. But again, I wanted to state I'm not a medical provider. I just went online, did some research, and I just wanted to talk about the journey I'm going through, and I hope that this helps some of you guys. If you are also going through this and you want to talk it out, leave a comment. This is a safe space. We need to be a community, especially for women as we get older. We need to be here for each other, and we need to talk about what we're going through because our parents aren't talking about it. But now I'm over 35 and I'm dealing with symptoms that I wasn't expecting to deal with. But I wish I had known about this prior to. So if you're starting to notice your period's getting a little bit heavier, I highly recommend you talk about everything with your doctor. Look up everything, write your questions down, and make them provide a response. And if they need to go in and just double check, especially if you're someone that truly wants to start a family, you know, make them do it, because you don't want to be over 35 and being shoulda, coulda, woulda, you know. So again, that got very deep, but I want to thank you guys for sticking around for this entire video and sticking around for the 2-part series. I hope you learned something new, and I hope that this helped you if you're experiencing some issues as well. Now, if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. I will admit, when you hit that like button, it does motivate me to make more content like this. And if you want to stick around, go ahead and subscribe. I want to thank you guys for joining this 2-part series, and I will make sure I send an update as the months go down the road. But I do want to thank you guys for joining, and I will talk to you guys later. Have a good one. Bye.